Are you going to shout?
I'll give it a shot. It's pretty long in the Maybe come remind it again. I'd actually just like to do a presentation because I think what Nick was saying about wireless alternatives and what we've said generally about the way we can actually make communities affordable. I just wanted to share an invitation basically for any of you who want to come across and look at two godforsaken villages in the North Yorkshire Moors called Newton and Rawcliffe and Stape, where we haven't gone as far as Chris's fibre, but we do have a very, very competitive and a very, very equivalent solution to what you're talking about for Gamblesby. Two villages, total combination of 120 homes, 20 businesses, had half a megabit beforehand, now have a 50 megabit backhaul to a local secondary school, and I'll come on to the public sector bit probably at the end of the next session. But through connecting and upgrading the local school, we have 50 megabits up to that community, who now all have between 5 and 10 megabit capability over wireless, which to them is next generation at a speed, at a cost, depending on what they want to do with it, between 20 and 40 pounds. That makes their community a next generation digital Britain community. The one question I'd like to just pose, if I may as well, Roy, just to the panel at the right time, is we've talked about, and I think the comment's been made several times, about ensuring that these networks and these patchworks are made open. Malcolm, I know you mentioned the whole John thing. I don't think we've talked yet enough about the risk of other service providers, big national players, not being able to come onto these networks because they can't afford to do an alternative operating system alongside the costs they pay for BT Wholesale Broadband Connect. Because it's one thing asking them to spend vast amounts of money for a very small margin business to get into something that BT deliver. It's an entirely different thing to ask them to then rebuild their operating systems with no margins in that business to go on to my networks, Nick's networks, any of our networks. And I think there's a big risk there in terms of making sure this thing really competitively, commercially is open.
We're going to move to the back, but if somebody wanted to address that subject, so big question, which is, if you want to get your Virgin Media package and watch your ESPN, how do you do it down a network built by Chris, for example?
I'm not sure. I'm sure Chris can answer that question, but I think on a more general point, it's been the issue about people building the patchwork quilt of networks, and this is a whole range of different people, from Chris and Daniel at the scale of small communities in Cumbria, through to the people of Sheffield, Doncaster, Barnsley, and the rest of the South Yorkshire region, the people of Bournemouth, the people of Dundee, where I3, H2O Networks, is building fibre to the home networks, and a whole range of others. It's a common issue. It's been raised. It was first raised about 3 years ago, I think, when people started talking about the fact that the commercial investment from BT and Virgin Media could only go so far, and that was going to leave a huge gap which had to be filled some other way. And almost immediately, people from Ofcom and other places started saying, well, this could be a real problem if people connect to networks which are being built but are not part of the BT network. Then how will third-party service providers like TalkTalk be able to deliver their services, and will that inhibit and restrict customer choice? All the people who are building these networks, I think almost without exception, are building open access networks, which means that they want to create platforms on which we as consumers and citizens can access the types of services that we wish to access and buy our services from ISPs that we choose. The big problem is that those service providers, as David mentioned, can find it quite difficult to deal with smaller networks, particularly if they have to deal with hundreds and hundreds of them. Lots of different networks mean they have to have systems for doing business over those networks, which could be quite idiosyncratic. So to address that problem, there's a number of things going on. One is at the national level, the Broadband Stakeholder Group is working with a number of players to define or to look at the whole issue of common technical and business process standards. We're very much part of that process. We've also been developing a concept which we call the Joint Operating Network, or the Joint Open Network, which enables service providers and people building networks to connect in a series of hubs which will be built around the country to ensure that it's as low cost as possible for both the networks being built and the service providers themselves to connect together and ensure that we as citizens and consumers get the services that we need. It's like creating a new marketplace for services in a sense. So work is going on to address this problem. It's not an easy one to solve, but it certainly is one that has to be addressed and dealt with. Thank you.
Dr. Jewett, I represent Avanti Communications. We're a British satellite operator who sell satellite broadband to telecom companies, who then in turn supply residential customers or business customers in rural areas. We're also launching our new satellite Highlights 1, which will have broadband coverage across the UK and Europe. I've listened carefully to the panel and all the presentations today, and it seems to me that buzzword seems to be fibre. I mean, some of the business models is not feasible in many areas for fibre, as a lot of people have alluded to. And even if it is, you're still looking at a couple of years away for fibre to be implemented in rural areas. The point I'd like to pose, not just to the panel, but to everybody here, is that broadband is available now. Avanti Communication can provide broadband now to rural areas. And not a lot of satellite discussions have been posed as a solution today. And if we're here actually participating and we hope we have a stand, and if somebody's interested in having broadband now, then please come and speak to us. You're more than welcome to discover what you can actually achieve in terms of broadband speed today. Thank you.
Okay, so this is an infomercial, but an important one, which is that part of the solution will be maybe not a very large part of the solution, but part of the solution certainly for a very remote farmstead in the middle of nowhere might well be a satellite solution. There is a stand here. Satellite is quite interesting. There are many issues which people on the panel will talk about why people tend not to favour satellite, but there are also many advantages. Certainly it doesn't involve a lot of fibre in the ground. Good opportunity to follow up with this gentleman here and with any other satellite company. The government, while we're talking about this, is looking at negotiating a national framework contract for satellite provision, which may drive the price down per house. But thank you very much indeed for contributing this. We now have a contribution from Appleby.
Carl Bendelow Heart of Eden project. I've seen these projects over the years, and different villages have taken the initiatives, and it's good to see the enthusiasm of the individual team leaders, let's put it that way, and they work extremely hard. But what do they see in the way of succession? As they get to the stage of Dan wants to retire, Chris wants to give up and do something else. Coalescing in some way? I mean, if you look back at the way electricity was rolled out to rural areas, lots of villages did it, but then they were taken over by the electricity boards. Do you see this sort of happening to your projects, or are you rather precious about your own little project? What's the way forward?
Okay, board.
You want me to answer that?
I think maybe you and then Daniel quickly. Yeah.
Am I live? The way I see it, if we all built something in the way that the villages did in the old days with their electricity and the water, and then eventually it's nationalised and taken over by a big company, well, that's fine, it doesn't matter, as long as we've all got a decent connection at that time. And so if we all put fibre in and one day it's taken over and somebody else runs it, who cares if we've all got fibre? We've all got fibre, haven't we? Does it matter who owns it? It would be nice if the community owned it, but if that's not going to be sustainable, it doesn't matter. This country needs a good connection. We all need a good connection. The incumbent hasn't provided it. We're going to provide it. The incumbent then wants to take it over and run it and not bull us for it. Fair enough. But I don't care who owns it as long as it's here. Yes, we have thought about it, but we can't see the future. Neither could the people who started electricity in Walcott. You just did what you had to do to get what you needed for you and yours. That's all we're doing.
Danny? Yeah. I mean, from our point of view, the team at Cybermore, we're spending quite a lot of time at the moment looking at the resilience within the team in terms of if one person leaves, how does that work get picked up, and working with a range of different suppliers so that you know, we're not going to be cut short if someone moves on. I think in terms of where these networks go in the future, a key part of it is going to be around building to common standards, and that's why we're part of the Independent Networks Cooperative Association, because we recognise that working towards standards means that the services which we offer will be interoperable, and there's potential there to collaborate with other communities, share resources with other networks, and actually reduce our costs and plan for that succession if at some point, you know, the team don't want to do it anymore.
Okay. Please. Yeah.
My name's Simon Owens. I'm a neighbour of the folk here. I'm come from Teesdale in County Durham. We are in the process of delivering a WiMAX a project in Teesdale. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about it and then let you know about it. I guess you could call me a volunteer or community activist, whatever you like. A pain in the arse is most called. What we did, we've been working at this for years. We identified that we needed to come up with a solution that we wanted. There were lots of people in our community who wanted a solution. Just to give you an idea of the scale, we're 836 square kilometers. We're 37% of the land area of County Durham, but only have 5% of the population, about 26,000 people. And we have, it's very similar to Penrith and this part of the world in Cumbria. We felt that we needed public sector money. We wanted a comprehensive solution. In the end, we managed to convince our local regional development agency to come up with some money. Basically some underspend. We had to spend it very quickly. We went through a horrendous EU tendering type of process. A lot of what we did is not necessarily what I'd recommend you to do. In fact, I can tell you a lot about what not to do in what we learned. But we have now a project where we're about to deliver by the March, rolling it out before then, a coverage, 100% coverage. That is the design.